All right, and cool. Okay, so let's get started. Again, welcome to Learn to Code Week 8. Today we are going to be working on forms and use state and conditional formatting, and we're going to use the Fetch API. Today is probably going to be one of the more technical courses that we've come across. We did do a bit of JavaScript, and we've done already creating the React app. However, today is probably going to be one of those courses or one of those classes where you'll probably walk away with a lot of really good information, but also very probably lost on how to put it all together in terms of puzzle pieces. And so today I'm going to really try to hammer the point home of how to use state or how to use useState and how to use conditional formatting and how to use the Fetch API. Okay, so with that, what are we going to be focusing on? Obviously, we're going to be building out our final product, which is this web page right here. And we've done a lot of copying and pasting, but today we're going to focus on making this form down here functional. So let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do is share out my Visual Studio Code editor and share it out. By the way, if you're joining for the first time and you haven't been here yet, and you want to follow along, I'm going to highly recommend downloading what is called Node.js. You're going to need this as this is the basis for creating a React app. So go ahead and download Node.js. This is free. It's not a product I work for, but this is the foundation for running JavaScript on your computer um, outside of the actual web. And so when we create React and we work with that product, we are going to need to run Node.js in order to be able to download the correct components for it. And then also today, Visual Studio Code. Oops. Visual Studio Code is the editor that I am using, and it is this one. Again, I do not work for any of these companies, but these are free products that are very commonly used in the industry. And again, 100% free. Download it for your Mac, your Windows, your Linux, whatever OS you use. And so here, if you can see my screen, hopefully, you can see that I am using Visual Studio Code here. All right. So inside of here, I have a folder called Week 8. You can see that folder right there. We are going to be focusing on this folder today, and this is the 8th week of our course. So I'm going to go ahead and open what is called a terminal. And in the terminal, new terminal, and it automatically puts me into week 8. Hopefully, if you've been following along, you'll know that last week we introduced, or last couple of weeks, we introduced ourselves to this npx command. And npx is node package create, or short for node package create. And we're going to do a create React app. And if you want to follow along while I'm typing, great. But I'm going to recommend for this first time I run through this to not follow along, just so you can get a flavor or get a feel for what's happening. But I'm going to create a React app first, and this is going to launch into something that looks really weird, but it'll start downloading all of the components for our React app, and it'll look kind of funky at first. So we see it's installing React, React DOM, React scripts with a template. And so it's going to take some time, roughly about a minute, to download everything. So while it's downloading everything, we can see we have a first app folder that got created already on its own. And inside of first app, there's a package JSON file. And inside of this folder, there's going to be more folders that show up momentarily. One very important one is called node modules. If I am going too fast at all, let me know, and you can type it in the chat like, hey, slow down, or can you repeat that? Feel free to type it in the chat, and I will gladly assist. So here we have our node modules, which has all the packages that come with React. And so we'll be leveraging a few of these. And then we have our public folder, which has our index.html, which is the most important file in all of web development. And then we have our source files. This is our JavaScript with HTML combined. And so let's take a look at what this looks like. So here we get instructions. It says we suggest that you begin by typing cd first app. So I'm going to go into cd first app and typing npm start, and we will see what that looks like. So once I run that, starts the development server, and here we have our development server with our nice, wonderful React logo, and we have some text here, and we have a link here. And so over the past couple of weeks, we've been learning. Hopefully we're familiar with this, and we can go over and see, oh, hey, inside of app.js, I know where to go to modify this one. I've seen this before. So inside of app.js, I can start to modify and put in what I want to have in here. Now, I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to kind of quickly review what we did in the past couple of weeks just to get us caught up properly to where we can get to working on the contact form, which is our focus for today. So originally we have our web page that we want to emulate or replicate. And so here I'm going to go into View and Developer Tools inside of the browser. If you're using Chrome or Mozilla or Edge or whatever browser you're using, there should be some type of way to go into View, Developer, and Developer Tools. Once we're in Developer Tools, we can go into Elements, and I'm going to copy everything from the body element. And so all I have to do is highlight the body element, whether this is expanded or not, doesn't matter. But if this is the first time seeing Developer Tools, we have our whole entire HTML code right here. And this page is all HTML. This is not React. This is purely HTML. And so in here, there's a body. And inside of a body, there's all these divs. And these divs represent all of these different components that are on the page. And so I'm going to right click on body and click copy and copy element. I'm going to bring that into here. I'm going to get rid of everything in here and I'm going to paste in the body. Now, in so doing, we have a few issues that we need to take care of. First and foremost are these red lines here. There's this problem with this word image. There's probably a problem with this word input down below here. And so the problem really is with the closing tag. Every one of these needs a closing tag. So we talked about this in detail. So I'm going to go over it pretty quickly today and just add in the necessary things we need in this to be able to rectify this error. So we can get rid of all of those errors real quick and then come over here and hit the last two. So really, it's just putting in this / and this / there. So we get rid of all those errors. The other thing we're going to do is here we see class equals. We need to change this. And it's not like a huge thing, but we do want to be able to change this because class inside of a programming language is a reserved word. And so inside of React, it was dedicated or it was decreed or decided that class will be renamed into class name. So I'm going to type in class name here. Oh, so there's a YouTube link that I will share out at the end that will have all of these recorded videos. But if you want to go and check on YouTube, it's called Learn to Code, or if you go to the meetups in the previous meetups, you'll be able to see the link in the chat. So after I am done today, I will go and navigate to the YouTube channel and upload it to the chat window. So you'll have access to the previous ones. All right, so here we now have most of our settings correctly done. I'm going to change the word div or body to div. And then at the very bottom, we're going to change the word body to div. All right, so we should be all good. So now let's check on our React page. And hey, looks like we've got these images with the crayons and all of that. And we've got our text and we've got our contact form down below. But why does it look like this? This looks terrible. Why does it not look like this? Well, there's a component we have to include, which is called CSS. And so I'm going to navigate over to sources. So before I do that, below here, inside of the nav bar, below this section is a whole bunch of CSS. I can copy all of this individually, but I'm going to recommend against doing that. And I'm going to suggest going to sources and going into CSS style sheet And then I can copy this whole thing. And this is the CSS for the page. So let's copy this whole thing. And we're going to copy that and put it into app CSS. And we're going to paste that in and hit save. And when I come back to React, hey, our project looks way cooler now. This is what it looks like. And it's identical to this page. All right, we're making a lot of progress really quickly just by copying and pasting. We don't really even have to understand what's happening inside of HTML. We don't even have to know HTML to do any of that. It was just copy and paste. Now, it's probably a very good idea to know HTML. So that's what we did in the first 4 weeks, 5 weeks of this course. And so today, what we're going to do is work on the contact form. But before we do that, I am going to do a slight review around how to organize this data, because this is a terrible layout and we don't want all this data inside of app.js. We want to have something simpler and cleaner. So inside of the source folder, the same level as app.js, we're going to create a folder called components. And inside of components, we're going to create another folder. We're going to call this one navbar. And then inside of navbar, we're going to create a file called navbar.js. So now inside of our components, we have navbar, and inside of there, we have navbar.js. So now we're going to go to creating a component. And so inside of here, we're going to create our first component, which is export const navbar. And there we go. And we're going to create our first arrow function component, which this is looking kind of crazy if you've never seen this before. So with this particular component, we're going to export it right away. It is a variable-based component, and it is just a arrow function, a very common way to write functions in React. And so inside here, because this is our navbar, what I'm going to do is copy in all of our navbar stuff. So remove it from there, go to the navbar and paste it in. Done. And so now I'm going to inside app.js, I'm going to include the navbar. Now look very closely. We have this import components already. We have this nig here, and that link will, or that link to our previous file will automatically be included, and I can save that. So now when I come back to my page, I have my navbar up here ready to go. Now, if I don't include this navbar and I just highlight it out, well, our navbar disappears from up top. So we know it works. So cool. I'm going to go ahead and quickly do that for all the other components just to reiterate how to organize our data. So inside of components, I'm going to create a hero folder. And inside of the hero folder, I'm going to create a hero.js file. And inside of here, we are going to go to the hero section, cut that out, and come into here, export const hero component, turn, and pop that in. And now inside of our app.js, I'm going to create a hero.js, and it imports it automatically. There's our hero, and boom, we have our hero section. And again, if we want to see if that really worked, save that, comment out the hero section, and we see it disappear. So cool. All right. So this is going to get a bit tedious, but I want to make it so that it's very much reiterated or reinforced that this is a way to create a good structured hierarchy within React. And this is going to be very common when you see other React projects, that it's going to be broken out into components, and it makes it much easier to work with. So we're going to do the section 1 component and grab into section 1, export const section 1, return, and there we go. Pop that in, and we go to app.js and we hit section 1. And there we go. Section 1 is here as well. Now I'm going to do the same thing for section 2 and 3 and the contact form. So, oops, wrong place. Components, section 2, and inside of section 2.js, we are going to create the section 2 data. And inside section 2, export fonts, section 2, and pop in our arrow function, return. And hopefully, I know this is really tedious, but I'm hoping that you're not paying attention so much to the actual code or the syntax, but you're paying attention more to the pattern that's taking place. Like I'm taking out a section and replacing it with just a line, and basically I'm referring to another component. So I took out the navbar quote or code, put it into another file, put this in. Same thing with the hero, same with section 1, section 2, and the same thing I'm going to do with section 3 and the contact form. So as I continue to create these separations, I hope you can see that there is a definite pattern emerging, even though the words are different and the organization might be a little bit different. But hopefully you can see that I'm doing the exact same thing over and over. Um, and that way it makes it hopefully easier to learn how to structurally organize it. So there's kind of a pattern to all of this. Let me jump down and copy section 3. And put down here. Cool. Section 3, paste that in, and we'll go to app.js, and we will pop in section 3. And there we go. So inside we have our section 3, and finally we're going to do the contact form. And so when we come in, let's copy this out. And I forgot we do have one more, which is the footer. So we'll have 2 more to do. So get out the contact. Inside of components, we have contact form, and inside of contact form, we will paste in contact form. And there we go. And so inside of app.js, again, pop in that contact form component. And finally, we'll do our footer. So inside of components, we will do a footer, and we will do a. Now you might be thinking, holy wow, that's a lot of work just for like, I've already got my code in here. Why do I have to keep splitting it out into smaller and smaller and smaller segments? This is a really small web page, but when you get into larger web pages, when you get into the full sort of like building out a Facebook or building out a WhatsApp or building out a Tinder, or building out whatever application you want to, there are many, many, many components that combine together to contribute to the entire web page. And so it is really important to have all of these in smaller chunks, because you're going to have different teams working on these chunks by themselves. And so you don't want teams working on the full project all together. You want teams working on individual components so they don't break the entire application. And so if we split it off into smaller components and people are working in smaller and smaller areas, then the components or the application, if there is a problem, it won't take down the whole application. It'll just affect that one component as opposed to the entire project. And that's why we do this. So there we go. So now we have our whole web page completely done. And how do we know that? Well, let's take a look at what we've done in here. We've imported all of our items. I'm going to get rid of this logo because we no longer need that one either. But we've basically changed up our entire page to go from all that CSS or all that HTML right in the beginning to now just these few components right here. And now we know, hey, there's a nav bar, there's a hero, there's a section 1, 2, and 3, contact form, and a footer. This is pretty standard. These are now boxes that we've put our project into so that we can then go and modify independently. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. So inside of our project, we now have this contact us page. And so inside the contact form, how do we prove that? Well, inside here, I'm going to change this data. I'm going to put in the word now here, and we're going to see how that updates the page. So when I come back here, hey, contact us now. That's a pretty terrible thing to put on the web page, but I'm doing it so we can prove that inside of this component, we really do have functionality here. Okay, so now we're going to get into this form, and I'm going to just fill out this form as it is, and we're going to see what happens when I fill out the form and then just submit it. So I'm going to put in my name, I'm going to put in my email, and we're just going to do, and let's change that up. And this is a test message. And we're going to go ahead and submit this form. And whoa, it refreshes and automatically comes back down here. And there now is this question mark here. So this is very standard inside of HTML that when we hit this submit button, the page will refresh and all the data will be gone. So this is something we need to account for because we don't want to refresh the page. That is not behavior that we want. So how do we prevent that behavior? So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at capturing data. We're going to look at the right way to be able to modify the data and present the data. So now let's jump into what is called useState. This is going to be really complicated, but because default HTML does this refresh thing where we hit submit and the page just sort of automatically refreshes, that's not behavior we want. So we need to prohibit that behavior. We need to stop that behavior. We need to say, hey, whoa, 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 don't do your default behavior. And this is very much baked into HTML because when the history of HTML, a little history lesson, when HTML first started, forms were really generic and there wasn't really JavaScript. So if you had a form and you hit submit, you wanted something to happen. But now that we have JavaScript, we don't want something to happen with the HTML. We want something to happen with the JavaScript. And so we need to prevent the default behaviors of HTML. And so this is going to get really complicated because there's so much history with development that we've got two conflicting ideas. So I'm going to recap and just say back in the day, back in the early days, before JavaScript, HTML would submit the form automatically, which meant a refresh of the page as a means to send data to the next place. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. There's a lot going on here. What do you mean? So I kind of get in the early days before JavaScript, that was archaic, that was like geocities.com where you just had HTML and CSS, and there wasn't really anything fancy you could do with the pages like we can do today. What we have today is highly, highly interactive, and we're getting even more interactive, but it was highly not so interactive back in the day. And so back in the day, you'd hit HTML and you'd submit the form automatically, which meant a refresh. And so what I'm going to do actually is just demo what a form might look like. And then we're going to take this contact form and we're going to pop it into a regular HTML page. And the reason I want to show it is because looking at the archaic way things are done is probably really helpful to get an understanding as to why we need to put all these complexities that I'm going to show you into React. So I'm going to create a file, and you don't have to do this, but I'm just doing this for showing purposes, for demonstration purposes. We're going to do a touch index.html, and inside of here, I'm going to do an HTML5 template, and inside the body, I'm going to pop in this contact form. And here I'm going to run a live server. Again, don't follow along here. I'm just going to show you what we're talking about. I know this looks terrible. This looks ugly. It is not pretty at all, but I want to show the functionality. This is just purely HTML. There is no React in here. There is no JavaScript. This is just plain good old HTML. And watch what happens in the URL here when I hit the submit button. So hit submit, and all of a sudden we get this question mark thing. Now it's probably really hard to see, but this page refreshed, like the entire page did a refresh. That is not good for a web page. That is terrible. From a user experience perspective, that is a long time to wait for data to come and go. We want something much faster, much more interactive. We don't want to do this processing live while the user is there. That's a terrible experience for the user. So what do? We introduce JavaScript. Now, I'm going to belabor this point just to show what's really going on here. But inside of our form, we have a form here, and inside of the form, we have a button, and automatically this becomes a submit style button because it's inside of a form. If it's not inside of a form, if I take this button and I just take it outside of this div and I put it outside of the form and I refresh and I come back here and I just refresh this data, that button's not really going to have anything. Whoops. There we go. So I'm going to come back here and hit this. And that button doesn't really have an effect. The page isn't reloading. So I'm going to type in Sunil at sunil.com. And this page won't reload because the button is outside the form. So let's submit. Hey, nothing is happening. I'm hitting this button all day long. You can see it. You might even be able to hear my mouse click. Nothing happening on this submit because the button is outside of the form. Now let's bring this button inside the form and then we will refresh. So I'm going to refresh this page and I'm going to type in Sunil at sunil.com. This page will now refresh and this data will all be gone. And I'm going to submit and boom, refresh, all the data is gone. This is the archaic way to do HTML. It's a terrible way, but this is how it was done. Now, inside of here, one thing that I did forget to pop in that I don't have to pop in for JavaScript, but I will pop in here is a name component. And this one I'm going to call name. This one I'm going to call email. And this one I'm going to call message. And so now we're going to see something else happen up above. And I'm going to submit this. And now up top we get name, email, and message. Holy what? So I'm going to type in Sunil at sunil.com. And now look at the URL after I hit submit. So submit, and hey, whoa, we've got name, we've got email with this weird funky thing, and then we've got message and how it all comes together. And this is how forms got submitted. We would send a form off using some type of action inside of the form to send it to the next place. So the form is just used to take this data and send it to the next place we want to process the form. And that was how forms were built back in the day because there was no JavaScript. And so today we have JavaScript. And so we want to capture this data and do something with this data inside of React. So all of that to say, now I'm going to show you how to put all this stuff into React. So let's go back to our project and let's run our project again. And inside of our project, we are going to see our contact form. And inside of our contact form, let's close out that index and let's close out all these files because there's a bunch of stuff in here we don't really need anymore. And inside app.js, we'll save that, close out the CSS, close that one out, and let's go to the contact form. So inside the contact form, we're inside of the actual form itself, and we have our HTML here. And now we have our form here. We've got our little button down here that's inside of the form, so it'll automatically submit. So inside, how do we get this to not get submitted? Well, first and foremost, let's do something down here. There's two ways to do it. inside of the form or inside of the button. And the most common way is inside of the form. And there are some attributes, just like class name, just like for, just like type. We've got these attributes that extend beyond the actual input. So there's the input, there's the text there, there's these few attributes, name, ID, columns, rows. We can add an attribute inside a form called on submit equals. I'm going to put in some really funky handlers here. On submit handler. So this will look really, really, really weird. And we don't have an on submit handler yet, so we have to create one. If I save this as is, we're going to have a problem. And the problem is going to be, hey, on submit handler is not defined. So, okay, let's build out the on submit handler. Above the return between the export. So between export and between the return, there's this space I'm going to create. And inside of here, I'm going to create this variable, another constant. And I don't want to export this, but I want to keep it inside of here. And inside of here, I'm going to create a function called onSubmitHandler. Now, I can either create a standard function or I can create a variable-based function. And inside here, I'm going to create a variable-based function. So there's going to be a way to verify that this connection actually works. So I'm going to save this, our error goes away. Okay, cool. But here I'm going to do a console.log. And did this work or not? And I'm going to save this. I'm going to open up our developer tools. So inside of our developer tools, we go to console and we got this little error. I'm not going to worry about that one, but I'm going to hit submit and we're going to watch what happens here. It's going to happen really fast. Whoa, that happened really quick. I don't think I saw what exactly happened. But inside of here, if you look really, really closely, if you catch it just really fast, you might be able to see it on your own browser. But there's a did this change or not, or did this work or not, popped up really quick before the page refreshed. Okay, so cool. Our onSubmit handler thing went away. Now I'm going to stick in this variable called event. And event isn't really defined, but we're just going to see what happens. And submit, nothing really happens. So now I'm going to stick in a line here, which is really going to be event.prevent default. And this looks so funky. And so now I'm going to submit. And whoa, did this work or not? Stays. And it doesn't change. And I can continue to hit submit and the page doesn't refresh. Wait a second. All I did was pop in this event prevent default, and the page doesn't go away. Wait a minute, let me make sure this actually works. So you're telling me that all I got to do is pop in that event.prevent default and I am good to go? Yeah, that's it. Because if I refresh, did this work or not? Doesn't stay. It goes away and the page refreshes. What is going on? I don't like this page refresh. You shouldn't like the page refresh. So event.prevent default prevents the default behavior. This is a terrible workaround, but it is the best thing that is available in JavaScript. And if you don't come across this and you're working with forms for the first time, you will you will start to pull your hair out. Why is this form refreshing? I don't get it. How do I stop the form from refreshing? I don't understand how any of this works. Wait a minute, where did this event thing come from? Where did onSubmitHandler come from? Well, I'm losing my mind here. I've learned about functions, but there's nothing being passed in here to here. What is going on? So inside of here, there's an automatic shorthand that's happening, and it's something that JavaScript does a really good job of like hiding. But inside of here, this is going to be some really funky syntax again. But inside of here, there is an event that gets passed into the onSubmit handler and gets passed into the event this way. And so that's the full form of what's actually happening behind the scenes to be able to make this function work properly. Now, if you're not aware of functions, if you don't understand functions, or you're not familiar with this, don't worry about it. I do know that this is super confusing, super complicated, doesn't make sense on first glance, and nor should it make sense on first glance. This is JavaScript. This is why it's such a frustrating language, but it's also, once you get the hang of it, really kind of a cool language because it makes things too easy in a not so obvious way. So, welcome to the world of coding and programming. It is a mess, but yeah, I don't know how to explain it any more than that. It's a mess. It just is. This is one of those things that's just like, oh, this is how it works. Great. I just got to know it from here on out and just go do it. All right. So did this work or not? Yay. We're in our console. We see it working. Cool. Now when I type in Sunil at sunil.com, and this message should stay after I hit submit. Does it? And so I'm going to hit submit and the message stays. We know it's staying because we can see the number incrementing. I hit it 22 times, I'll make it 30 and the page is not refreshing. Now I'm just going to prove it and we're going to go to event prevent default and we're going to save this and now everything will go away. But did this work stays and I'm going to hit submit now and is it going to stay? Is it going to go? Oh, it went. All right, I need the prevent default. Great. Okay. All right, fine. I'll put it in there. Got it. I learned my lesson. Event prevent default has to be there. I have to have event here, and event gets passed here. If I want to make this shorter, all I have to do is just refer to the function, and automatically event is in there. I don't get it. All right, it's cool. All right, don't worry about it. It is up to you whether you want to do this every time, which is totally cool, or you want to use the shorthand notation, which is basically just calling the function. So you can do this as well. Now, we will also see that we're going to use that other method because we haven't even touched the inputs yet. We haven't even gotten to the name, the email, and the message. So how do we collect that information? So I'm going to put this event, I'm going to do the long way and put it back in here again and pop that in. Okay, so now did this work or not? Yes, it absolutely did. We know we are having a functional page that is not refreshing. Okay, so now how do we collect this data? How do we get the name, the email, and the message here? So even if I put in the name equals, let's go name, and this is email equal or name equals to email. And here the name equals message. So even if I do all of that, nothing's going to work, which is fine. But I'm going to get rid of the event prevent default. And I'm going to refresh the page. And we're just going to see, okay, cool. We got that same behavior in React as we got with the previous HTML by itself form. So at least that part looks familiar. Okay, I got name, email, and message. Awesome. But now how do I capture that data inside of React? Okay, cool. I'm going to use something called useState. So capture data within the form or capture state data, capture or keep the state of the data. This is going to be really confusing, but follow the syntax here. Const name set name equals to use state. I'm going to make this an empty field to start with, and I need to import use state from React. Okay, what is going on? This looks crazy. And you're absolutely right. It is crazy. I don't know how to describe or articulate why these things are called the way they are, but I'm going to go ahead and do the syntax first and then walk backwards to hopefully explain the thought process and the logic behind all of this. So what we do is inside of this input, there is another attribute. Just like this on submit attribute, there is an on change attribute. So on change, anytime someone types in a letter or a character or anything in here, I want to capture that information. I'm going to capture that information into the event. And inside the event, I'm going to set name. I'm going to set it to event.target.value. All right, so this is funky. I don't get what's happening, but okay. And let's go ahead, and this is going to look funky as well, but we're going to do a console.log name. And I'm just going to save this. And so in here, we got a console.log name, and maybe I'll pop in some extra text here, and I will type in name. There we go. And so hopefully we have name here, and we have no data in there as of right now. But I'm going to type in inside of name, and I'm going to type in an S. Hey, what? Why am I getting it twice? Well, wait a second. The page is rendering, and then it's re-rendering. So I'm getting this double effect. If I don't have this, then I'm going to refresh and I'll get rid of all that. I'm just going to type in S and nothing happens. I don't see any data coming here. But if I show the console log again, I see it happening again. And so there's a thing in here with, I think it's coming from the index.js, where, let me see, I think it's the strict mode as to why it's doing it twice, but now it should just do it once. There we go. There's something funky within JavaScript where inside of strict mode, it runs it twice, and I don't exactly have a great explanation for that right now, but you see now it just does it one time, and it's a lot less annoying. The strict mode is something that we can use for development, so I'm going to go back in. As annoying as it might be, I'm going to keep this in the way it is. That way, we're not messing with the index, and I don't have to come in here and show you, but I did want to show you that it is in the index. If you want to get rid of it, get rid of the React strict mode. One day I'll explain this in the future coding, but for today, I'm going to leave that one alone because it is a different topic altogether. But what we see is now I have a way to capture this data. It is held in a variable. Whoa, that's cool. So it's held in this variable name. So wait, let me rewind. What just happened? So useState is a default way for me to be able to store data on the web page. So I can now store data on the web page, and then I can use it for later on some type of processing. Now, if I want to use it for counting of a button, like incrementing or decrementing, in this case, I'm going to use it for capturing the name, I can do all of that. So let's give a quick example how I would use useState for capturing a number if I create a button to increment. So if I have a button down here, and we call this incrementer. Actually, we'll put this as number, and we'll put this as number, and we'll have this as on click equals to increment handler. So inside of here, I know this makes no sense, but I just want to show that useState would be used for increment handler. And there we go. And we haven't gotten number yet. So up above here, what I'm going to do is const number set number equals useState. And we're going to have this as a 0 or a empty string. And actually, let's set this as 1. And in here, we're going to do set number, set number to number plus plus. And so I should be able to do that. So inside of here, I have this button that says number, and oh no, assign variable to constant. Let's do set number to 2. Let's try that one. And let's refresh. There we go. So in down here, we saw number change to 2. Number, let's do number temp equals 2, number plus 1, and we'll just do temp here. There we go. So now we have this number incrementing here on this side. If I refresh the page, this all goes back to the default. And so I know that might be hard to see. I'm going to bring that number thing up so it's easier to see up above. Alrighty, let's bring it. There we go. So now this number is above here. So every time I click the number, that number is going to go up in count. So we see it incrementing 1 through 27, 28, 30, 35, 37, 38, 39, 40. So we can see it incrementing, but the page hasn't refreshed at all. So I'm just going to refresh this entire page and it drops down to number 1. What I want to have happen is as the person is on the page and they do something, I want to make sure I capture that, keep it in a variable, and maintain that particular variable as long as they don't refresh. Refreshing kills everything and puts it back to 0. So this is a reset. Now I have it where I can capture and keep that data here. What's actually happening is this page behind the scenes is re-rendering over and over and over and over again, really, really fast. But you can't really tell. So this is like a re-render, but not quite. It's just re-rendering this component. So this is this is changing, but not everything else is changing. When I hit the refresh, this is when everything in the background changes. So this is really complicated with React to understand the document object model and then how it interacts with rendering of the page. When we refresh, there is a render, there is a reset of everything and a refresh of everything and a redrawing of everything. And that is called a re-render. So all the redrawing, the refreshing, resetting, that is called re-rendering. Now here, where we have this button and we're clicking 1 through whatever, however many times, and this is going up, we see that just this part is changing, not all of this. So if I type in here, Sunil over here, and I hit this number 20 over and over and over again, that name stays. It doesn't change at all because only this component in the state is getting re-rendered or re-changed, which is really cool. I don't have to change up my entire web page. This used to not be possible without JavaScript back in the day. So I couldn't. I'd have to refresh the whole page, pull from the database, push back into the web page, and it was a very slow, tedious, crappy process. But now it's much faster and much snappier. This is kind of like having a local database in a weird way. So it makes the user experience much smoother, much nicer. So that's why when you can go to sort of like an airline webpage and you start looking at ticket prices and you can put something in the cart, it remembers it in the cart. That's all JavaScript. Here, there's something happening. This is all JavaScript, and it doesn't affect my experience on the web page itself. I still get this nice experience. I still stay within the world of the web page. I still stay within the ecosystem. That's the power of JavaScript, is I can do a lot of these dynamic things and keep the user inside of the ecosystem. So I know that was a tangent. I know that might not have been the best example, but what I wanted to show was, hey, we can do these things, and this is kind of the power of JavaScript, where I can keep a person inside of the ecosystem of the page, change a lot of the dynamics, and still not have to refresh, re-render, take that time that it takes to re-show all the data. I can just manipulate the data that I want to, not everything. All right. So I'm going to get rid of, oh, I'm going to actually comment out just so we have that there and we know what's possible to do. But now I'm going to refresh this so we start off again fresh. Now let's actually work on the form. So we did the actual contact form, and you see I can even capture the errors. I even did typos in here. I've like I've put an extra L, and I've done a bunch of another typo, so it'll capture all of this data. Oh, no, I can even do type 0, I can even do type O, and it captures all of this data as I'm going through. And this is all happening behind the scenes. This is clearly taking processing, but it's not refreshing my entire page. Awesome. So that's the power of useState. I know that's going to take a little while to probably play around with to understand in your own terms, in your own way, how to use useState. But I hope what I showed today is at least a good introduction on how to use useState. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the set number, like comment this out. We're going to go back to const name, set name, and all that. So we haven't used the name variable outside of the console log. So I'm going to console, or I'm going to comment that out. And we're going to go into email, and we're going to go to message. So const email set email equals to use state. We're going to keep that as a blank. And this is const message set message. And this one's going to be use state. And this is going to be that. And we're going to jump down here and we're going to use this on change again. Oh, this one's terrible. I don't want to type this whole thing out. Just get used to it. For now, on change equals to open, close curly bracket. Inside here, we're going to have the event. And to make it shorter, you can say E, which you'll see a lot more often, and set email to e.target.value. One day, I'll take you through e.target.value and show you what that is in the actual and where that comes from. So maybe it's not a bad idea to show it right now of what that e.target.value is up here in the event handler. So I will probably show that when we get to that component because it's easier to see. And inside of the text area, in the first text area, this one, not in the last one, but in this one, we're going to do the same thing. And on change, we're going to do a e arrow set message to e.target.value. All right, cool. So now when we refresh, we don't have anything yet, and we're going to do a submit, and it's going to go in on submit handler. And how are we going to capture that information? We're going to capture that information in console.log, name, email, and message. And we're going to see what that looks like when we actually submit the form. So Sunil at sunil.com, and here is my message. And we're going to submit. And oh no, it refreshed on us. Wait, we forgot something. Yeah, we did. We forgot that event prevent default. So we're going to pop that back in. And now we have this name, email, and message. And inside of here, we're going to type in Sunil at sunil.com. And woo, did it work? And we're going to hit submit and boom, hey, we get this beautiful information right here. My name, email, and did it work, the message. And where's that coming from? This line right here. Okay, so I want to show kind of like, and this one probably won't be a great example, but I will show you real quick where that, why do I keep typing weird stuff? I'm going to type in console and event or console.log event.target. And inside event.target, we have this form data and we have these values that show up. And so inside of here, this is the event target. And then inside of here is going to be the value. I'm trying to think of a good way to be able to show how to grab this particular one. But I think in here, oh, where does it come from? I'll have to come back and show you exactly how this information, how to console log this event. It's slipping my mind at the moment of how to grab that value, but it's very possible we can just do that. And I don't think that's going to work. But yeah, that's not going to work because it's not the value. I'll have to come back and show you exactly how to get this event. It slips my mind at the moment. But for now, we see, okay, cool, we can grab this whole event chain and we are good to go. So now we've connected it up to our submit handler. We've got our name, email, and message in here. Now what do we do with that name, email, and message? There's a few ways to go about it. Now, the first way, sometimes we might not even need this on submit, but in this case, I want to show you the on submit to show you how you would do it normally. And we're going to use what's called a fetch API. And I'm going to use this thing called formspree. So formspree, it's free. It's an email relay. You don't have to have any like a link or anything. All you need to do is set up a link like this, and you'll come to my first project, add a new project, and it'll give you a link. If you don't understand this, don't worry about it. I'm going to walk you through kind of the idea here. And I'm going to do two ways in here. So the first way is I'm going to get rid of the onSubmit component and knock that out. I'm going to do an action equals to, and don't type this yet, just follow along with me. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to break down what's happening here. So form action is to send all of this form data. We have to have a name in all of these. So make sure that if you're doing this, you have a name email and message in here, and each one of these has to have an identifier. So a name component, name component, name component, and then an individual attribute identifier for these. Don't have to worry about the on change or anything like that. We have our button in here to submit it, so it's all good. And we have this action to post. Now, this method post is very important because these two things are going to get sent over to formspree. Why is it going to get sent to formspree? Because we're saying, hey, take this data, and this is the next station I want you to send the data to. So now when we do our submit, we are going to do this sort of, we're going to refresh this. And we're going to do a name, Sunil, Sunil at sunil.com. And I'm going to send this to formspree. And I'm going to submit. And we're going to see what happens. And hey, whoa, how did this page come up? What is going on? This is formspree saying, hey, the form was submitted successfully. So I passed it on to the next location, and the next location told me, hey, success, sweet, things worked. How do I know they worked? Well, I'll get an email, but I can go to submissions and I can see today, October 29th at 8:55, I sent a message and it had an email, a name, and a message. I'm going to send this to formspree, and it sent it to an email that I have registered here with formspree. All right, so it's working. Holy wow, this is kind of cool. I don't have to do anything. It's all free. Absolutely. I would not, do not do this in production. Do not do this for a company you are consulting for. This is just for practice. This is not for any type of professional like setting. This is just for simple sites where you need a proof of concept or you need a minimum viable product. This is a really quick way to get that up and working. Now, I showed you the simple way to do it, and the simple way is just an action and a post. We're not manipulating any of the data in here with this method, but what if I wanted to manipulate the data in here? Okay, so here's one method I can use, but I'm going to show you another method. So this method, the action/post method, works, but does not allow for data manipulation. Okay, so what do I want to do? I want to do another method that allows for data manipulation, and that was our previous onSubmit handler. So in here, we're going to go back to our onSubmit equals to onSubmit handler. And so now we'll go back to our page and come back here. We'll refresh and get rid of this and go to the bottom. Then we'll go Sunil, Sunil at sunil.com, and back to the original. So this is not going to go into formspree, but we come back into the original where we had the onSubmit form handler up here. So now we can start to manipulate the data. If I wanted to make the name something else, the email something else, the message something else, if I wanted to append, if I want to change, so now I can set something with the name and say name equals, I wanted to change the name. Or if I wanted to say name equals name dot lowercase or to lowercase, I can change that, or to uppercase, whatever I wanted to do. I can change the data here however I wanted to. I'm not going to worry about changing the data, but what I am going to show you is the way to change the data and then send it. So here, after I have changed the data to what I want it to be, or to how I want it to be, I can use what's called a fetch API. And I want to show the documentation for React fetch examples. And oops, wrong one. There we go. Mozilla documentation does a really good job on using the fetch API. And so I'm going to show you the method that I like to use. And hopefully, there we go, making a post request. So we're going to use this asynchronous function, and I'm not going to get into asynchronous functions today, but I do want to show you that there's a concept of a running things in parallel so we don't slow things down or wait for things. So inside of here, if I'm going to use fetch, if I am going to use any type of API call, now whether that's fetch, Axios, or other call agent, I am going to want it to be an asynchronous, if I could type, call. Now, asynchronous means that I make the call, but don't wait for the results and process them as they come in. So programming is very much a top down. It goes step one, step two, step three, step four, step five. Now, what if I want to do step two, but don't want to wait for step two to finish? I want to go to step three, four, and five. And then when step two gets done, process step two. That's what an asynchronous function is. So let's say step one, step two, step three. Normally, I don't want to wait for any of these. I want to wait. So I would run these all as asynchronous functions. Async. So that way these run in parallel and I can get my results right away. I know that's kind of hard to understand if you've never seen or understood or experienced what it's like to have to wait for something to finish. But if I don't want to wait for it, and most of the time I don't want to wait for anything, I'm very impatient. No, everything should be asynchronous. In programming, you're going to have to wait because here it's going to run very much top down. Here in this program or in this, it's going to run this, then this, then this, then this, then this, and it's going to load top down. It does it relatively fast. But when we start handling with third parties, when we start dealing with external services, that is where we want to hand it off and be like, okay, I just want to pitch it out to that service. And then when it's done, I will process it when it comes back. But I don't want to wait on that external service. I have no idea what's going on with that external service. It could have a lag, it could have a delay, it could have some type of issue, but I still need to keep myself running. And so in that, I would use what's called an asynchronous process. And so here I'm going to type in the word async, and that changes this into a, whoops, did I type that in the wrong place? Maybe I did. I don't think I did, but where did I go? Oh, is it here? It might be here. Yes. No, it is not there. Why am I missing where to type that in? Uh, my bad. Let's go into another async. That's all function. Why am I missing where to type in an async? Why am I missing that? Yeah, I thought I did type it incorrectly. Yes, it is right here. But why am I getting an error? There we go. Okay, maybe I typed it wrong, but okay, there we go. So that word async is very important because inside of here is where we're going to use this fetch call, and we're going to do an await fetch. And inside of the fetch call, we are going to have the URL that we wanted to use. And we're going to have this open curly bracket with the things that we want to pass. So this is the basic idea of a fetch. And a fetch literally is go to this URL and do these instructions on that URL. And so inside of here, we're going to say the URL. So const URL equals this URL that we went to before, formspree URL. And inside of here, I'm going to type that and pop this into quotes. Cool. So we have our URL. And inside of the fetch, we're going to use what's called a method post. And inside of here, Uh, we are going to, I want to make sure I copy, like tell you where it is in the actual sort of, there we go. There's a request object creating a post object, making a post request. There we go. We're going to copy this method post, and I do need to have some headers in here. And headers are basically what I will use to tell the other side what type of message this is. So headers, uh, and generally speaking, with headers, I want to have inside of that request, where is my, I want to do it that way. This is the one I want. So typically you'll see it in this sort of method right here, headers with content type, and it's an application JSON. Now, if you don't understand what that means, it is okay. I'm going to be very honest. This is also archaic to me. I'm like, oh, Jesus, why do I need to know all this stuff? You don't. You can simply copy and paste this in, and it is okay. And then finally, there's going to be a weird format to send in the data, but it's going to be a JSON stringify. And this is going to look so funky, but it's okay. I'm going to walk you through it. So inside of here, we've got this body. And inside of here, we're going to JSON object. We're going to Java server object notation this data, my name, my email, and my message. And we're going to stringify it. And inside of here, I'm going to get rid of all this. So what are we going to stringify, and why do we need to stringify? What happens on a network when we send over data is we have to send it in a very specific format. Otherwise, the data will not get accepted by the network. So if we're sending data, we need to send it in a specific format. When we're receiving data, we need to unpack it in a specific format. And so there's a JSON stringify and a JSON parse. So this side, when we send, we stringify. When we receive, which we're not doing because we don't have the receive today, but in the future, when we go into full stack development, we will see the JSON parse when we receive data. And that way we can unpack. So this will put it into zeros and one bits, and the other side will parse and extract it from zeros and one bits to actual data. And inside here, we're going to send what is called a dictionary. And inside that dictionary, we're going to put in curly brackets, and we're going to put in name, email, and message. Now, wait a minute. You said dictionary. Why are you putting it in this way? You're absolutely correct. So the long form to put this in, because it's a dictionary, would be name, colon, name, email, colon, email, and message, colon, message. All right. So this is the way we send data over to the other side. Now here we want to put this into a variable. So we're going to const response equals the await, and then const data equals response dot JSON, and then we get console.log data. And we're going to await this response as well. So we're going to see console.log data afterwards. And now this is super complicated, but hopefully I didn't forget anything. We're going to refresh this and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Ugh, we're going to see. Fingers crossed. Maybe I screwed something up, but sunil.com, and hopefully I didn't make a mistake on this. And we're going to submit. And inside here, hey, wait a minute, nothing happened. Hey, but wait, what? We got this thing? What the heck is this? Next is thanks language. Okay, true. Whoa, where is this coming from? This is coming from formspree. So if I go back to formspree and now I refresh here and I look at what we got from our submissions, I can take a look at this and look at submissions, and hey, here's our second submission. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake on this, and I didn't. And so there's two ways to do it. So we saw that form way. This form action automatically gets us to a formspree thank you page, but maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want to have the user inside of my experience. Okay, cool. All right, so now I have the user inside of my experience. And so if this data comes back as being okay or true, so I can console log data.okay. So I know that now in here, I'm going to set up one more thing. I'm going to call this a processing. So const, actually sent message. So set, maybe I'll call it message sent. Yeah, message sent, set message sent, use state. And now inside of here, I'm going to put this as false for now. And this is going to get a little crazy. But what I want to do is test this out first. And so if data.ok, so if that's true, set message sent to true. Now, why am I doing this? What is what's the purpose for this? So inside of here, this is going to get a little funky and a little confusing, but I'm going to encapsulate all of this inside of a, a variable or inside of a curly bracket. And we're going to see some weird things happen. So I'm going to encapsulate all of this inside of a curly bracket, and then I'm going to put in some weird syntax. And the reason I'm doing that is because, let me go into here, and I'm going to go to message sent question mark. And inside of message sent question mark, if the message was sent, then I want to have that div show up. If the message was not sent, then I want to have a div show up. Or sorry, if the message was not sent, so if it was not sent, I want to show all of this. If the message was sent, if it's true, then I want to say, thank you for sending your message. Now, this is complaining because everything is inside of a variable. And so we've got to pop in a div down here and a div up above because we are inside of a, oh, now we got rid of all of those errors. Okay, now let's see what happened. Okay, let's go here and there we go. Oh no, so here I made one mistake. I set this to being message sent is false. So here, this is going to load as false. So if this is false, well, then I'm going to show this. So I know this might get a little confusing, but I'm going to say if this is not false, if that's true, then I want to show this contact form. Now what I've done up above, if I send a message to the formspree and everything goes okay and data.ok is true because we saw that from the return, then I'm going to set the message to true. I know this is probably, you're like, what is going on here? This is so confusing, but I'm just going to work through this and then we're going to work backwards. So this is going to be complicated. This is not meant to be easy. It is like, oof, it'll take a while for you to wrap your head around this, but it is the appropriate way to approach dynamic forms to keep the user contained inside of our web page when we make an external call. So I'm going to go through the nuances of what we've done and why we're doing all this again. So please be patient and just bear with me because I can understand this can be really complicated. Okay, so we're going to come back here. We're going to go Sunil at sunil.com. And this time I want to see a thank you message. And maybe fingers crossed, it works, it doesn't work. Hey, sweet, there it is. Thank you for sending your message. It looks terrible right now, so we probably have to go back and do some extra things on here to make the message look proper. But for the most part, hey, it's working. Thank you for sending your message. It worked. What cool. All right. All right. Let's just go back to formspree and see if it actually worked. Go to submissions. And there's a third message. And this time I want to see a thank you message. Awesome. And I see that thank you message on our page. So thank you for sending your message. Sweet. It's there. I know it's probably a bit low on the screen at the moment. So hopefully you can see this. I'm trying to create some space to be able to see it, but hopefully you can see that. But whoo, that was a lot going on. I'm going to back up and go over why we did it this way. So originally we had this form action here, and I'm going to get rid of that on submit. Now this form action goes directly to the site. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this. Everything resets, and I'm going to go here, Sunil at sunil.com. And this will give me a thank you from formspree. It takes the user outside of my ecosystem, which is fine, but probably not great if I want them to stay in my online store. Keep them here. How do I keep them here? So I know that was a weird message, but I'm going to submit this. And all of a sudden, boom, we go to formspree. The URL changed. We're no longer in my domain. We are in formspree's domain. This is, to the user, they probably don't care. But to me, I am a retail owner. I am a website owner. I want to keep them in my page. I want to keep them in my retail store. I want to keep them in my web page. Why am I giving business to somebody else? I want to retain their business. I want to keep it inside my store. I'm glad I'm partnering with formspree. They're a great service, but let me talk to formspree on my back end and privately between me and them, between a phone call. But I want to keep the user on my web page. I want to keep the user here within my ecosystem. So in order to do that, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and that is this second form. So here, this method allows me a lot more control over the user experience, which is really what we're trying to manage here with a web page. We really want to keep a user inside of our online store, online web page. That is how I think of web pages, that they are online retail spaces where we want to do everything possible to keep the user within and make that user experience very, very smooth. So here we've got our onSubmit handler. We're going to go up, and inside of our onSubmit handler, hey, we've got our name, email, and message. Where do we get that from? Well, we captured it from the fields. So for every field, I need a useState to be able to capture that information and put it into a variable. So now every time that information changes, I've got a way to capture it from the set name, set email, set message, capturing these values. And inside of those, I put them into variables, which I can then later reference inside of my function. Now that I've referenced them inside of my function, I can then take them to a fetch call. This is where you will have to experiment. It will not always be the same, but inside of here, the fetch function is pretty much the same. I turn this into an asynchronous function, which you don't have to do, but I would recommend it because it makes it for a faster, smoother process for your user, that you don't have to really wait on this to finish. You can allow for other things to happen. Once you start building out bigger web pages, you'll want like this component to do something. You want this component to do something else. You want this component to do another thing. So these can all handle their things. And as they start to finish, you'll see a change, a change, a change, but you don't have to wait on that function to finish. I have a pretty small use case here with the contact form, maybe not the greatest example as to how to show multiple things changing at once, but that's probably something that we'll tackle in the next course, which will be the full-on MERN stack, or the Mongo, Express, React, and Node stack. But after that, we come into this fetch call where we're saying, hey, I know this is I know the word fetch is kind of like to get, which kind of like, it's a weird thing. But here we're basically making a post call. We're saying, hey, I want to be able to make a change on the other side, which is called a post. Now, if I want to retrieve data, that's a get. We'll get into the nuances of a get and a post later on in the future. But for now, if I'm using a form, always it is a post to the other side. It's like a bulletin board. I need to post on the bulletin board what my information is for the other side to receive. The headers, don't worry about this. This is just something standard that you will see over and over and over again. And then JSON stringify and all of this stuff. This is just something that we're going to have to get used to, and it stinks, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if you very first time into React. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But for now, just remember at the very beginner stages where you're at, you need to JSON stringify, turn it into ones and zeros to send. The other end will parse that data back. Once we get that data, we do need to check if they got the message successfully or not. And let's see if they didn't get the message, what that means. And so we're going to do an error case. And here I'm just going to add in the word error here, uh, just to make it very obvious that this will not work. So let's save this and see what the console log data will be. I'm looking for this right here. And so let's do Sunil at sunil.com. And this message will result in an error that I want to see what that message looks like. And so here I hit submit, and hey, there's a post formspree error form not found. And so now we can process data.error or data.errors, and we can say what the actual code was, and there's a message in here. So if I put in data.errors.message, I'll be able to see that one. So console.log data.errors.message. So how do I navigate this? It's data.error, either form not found, or data.errors.message will give me form not found. And let's see if we can get this specific like form not found lowercase and see if that actually works. So save that, and I'm going to not put in that one. And let's submit this again. And we will see, oh no, I did not do that correctly. So data.errors, and maybe I have to do that first one. And hey, why is that not showing up? Let's see. Cool. Submit. Data.errors. Maybe it's 0.0.message. That is weird. Yeah, I don't know why I can't access that particular one, but I should be able to. Data.errors, but either way. Now I'm stuck on this one. Ah, there we go. So 0 and then dot message. See, I even get screwed up in this one trying to read these codes, but now I should get form not found. And this one's kind of funky. So the way to navigate this one is this is a index array. And in here, it's the 0th item in the array. So I need to get that slice. And then from that slice, I can then get to the message item in there. So the way that worked was data dot data errors 0 and then the message, as opposed to data.errors.message. I needed that array index slice in there as well. Then if I wanted to set up another message, I could and say, hey, based on this message, we can set a form not found or whatever error. So hopefully, I know that was quite a bit, but hopefully that makes sense to how to set up a form if everything works. It is very dependent on the other side. So this section here is very, very much dependent on the other side, what type of response you'll get. When we start running our own APIs and running our own database calls and having our own self-contained system, we have a lot more awareness and control over this. But since we're working with a third party called formspree, we have no control. Formspree has it all. So we need to react to what formspree gives us. So I know that was a lot, and I get that today was very complicated, but today I really wanted to showcase the power of useState, using forms, keeping somebody inside of the ecosystem that we have versus getting them kicked out to an external ecosystem. I wanted to show you how to be able to manipulate data and how to be able to capture data and how to provide a better user experience. So hopefully today was helpful for the useState. Next time, we are going to get into routing. So we're going to talk about services and how to make these pages fill out. And then your homework would be to fill them out however you so choose to see fit for your own portfolio and purposes. And then finally, the week after, we will load all of this, the whole thing, form and all, into a publicly accessible page onto GitHub. So with that, I will see you all next week. Do you have any questions before I leave? I apologize. Yeah, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. If not, I will see you all next week. All right, everybody. See you next week. Bye.